Hello, I am Professor Burton, and this is a communication course. We're going to talk about communication, and in this particular video, we're going to start at the beginning, talk about what communication is, the different aspects of communication, just give you some background as we get ready to delve further into the course. While we can't be together in person, we can certainly be together virtually, and this is an opportunity to do so. I suggest you get a pen, pencil, paper, so that you can take notes. Feel free to stop the video at any time so that you can rewind it should you need to, get more information, look up something if you want to. Do this at your leisure, okay? So pause it right now, get your paper, get your pen, and start when you're ready. I am going to share a screen for just a bit and talk about communication, and I'll be right back. All right, we are going to talk about communication. What is communication? If you had to give a definition, if someone asked you what is communication, what would you say? One thing I want you to remember whenever, and this is not just for this course, this is throughout the entirety of your life, when you are giving a definition, do not use the word to define the word. You will see several videos, or when people are talking and you ask them a question, well, what is love? Well, love is when you love somebody. You still don't know what love is, right? So you're going to take a moment and find other words to describe and define and to clearly educate people and share information with people about what you're speaking, the message that you want to send. So take a moment and just write down, what is communication? Just your own answer. Oh, you know what? You can also pause this for just a moment. I am going to upload a handout that might be beneficial for you to use in different parts of this. And this is one of the first questions that comes up. What is communication? So check online to see whether or not that information is there for you. What is communication? I'm going to leave that to you to decide. And then I'm going to go to the next question. Why do we communicate? We communicate for numerous reasons: to gain information, to share information, to influence others, to understand, to be understood. The list goes on and on and on. How do we communicate? So many ways. We communicate verbally, non-verbally, visually. Oh, there's so many ways, so many genres, so many methodologies that we could utilize to do this. And when do we communicate? We are always communicating. Always, even when we think we are not, we are. That's why people watch other people and without their knowledge. I may not think that someone is watching me when I'm sitting dining, but someone may be at the next table or waiting to be seated, and they'll look over and they make comments, or they're thinking something. They're deciding what's going on at wherever it is I'm sitting, right? We communicate all of the time. If somebody sits with their hand, like this, we probably think they're tired, or if they're yawning. All of those things matter when we communicate. The course definition we will use then is for communication is a process, which means that there's a way that it is done, a process by which people interact to create shared meaning by transmitting messages verbally and non-verbally. Let's break this down just a bit. A process means there is a right way to do this. We'll talk about this in a moment with the communication model that is also in your syllabus on one of the back pages if you wanted to download that and take a look. So it's a process. It is a way that we do it. Sometimes we get it right, other times not so much. by which people interact to create. When we think of creating something, it starts probably from scratch. It is a construct, the way that we get things started. And shared means it's between at least two people, perhaps even more. So it's shared meaning. What's interesting about this is we talk about creating shared meaning. It doesn't say that it has to be meaning that is agreed upon. As long as you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth, then perhaps in some way, form, or fashion, we have created a shared meaning. Again, it does not mean we have to agree with each other. It just means if we understand. And we do this by transmitting, by sending information, messages verbally, like I'm speaking now, and non-verbally. So then what is a competent communicator? It is he or she. It's one that creates shared meaning. We have that again. And the two words that are important here are effectively and appropriately. Effectively and appropriately. It is effective when the message that is sent and shared is received and understood. And it is appropriate when it is done so in a way that is acceptable by our society's standards, with our ethics, the right and wrong way of doing something. So certainly we know just because a message is effective, it doesn't mean that it's appropriate. I could say, I want to get a divorce to my husband. I want to get a divorce. But if I put on Facebook that I want to get a divorce and now my status changed to complicated, it's probably not quite appropriate. I've heard stories of people finding out that they were getting divorced on Facebook. Not a good look. Do you share emails with someone one-on-one, or does everyone in the office need to know? That's part of being appropriate, the method, the way that you do something. Lots of different kinds of categories for communication. We just talked about spoken or verbal communication. As you can see here, it's something that we do many times face to face. We can do it on the telephone and other ways as well. So it's a way that we can hear an oral kind of way. Nonverbal communication has to do with our body language, the gestures we use. It mentions here even our scent. It sends a message to us. Another way that nonverbal communication is used, and it's not listed here, is called paralanguage, P-A-R-A language. And that is the nonverbal messages, if you will, in our voice. If I pick up the telephone and ring someone and they answer and they say, hello, you would probably think, oh my gosh, I awakened them. They didn't say that, but if you hear them yawn, you may think that. Someone answered the telephone, hello, yes, how are you? What do you think? Probably that they're busy or in a hurry. Somebody picks up the telephone and says, hello. You say, hi, this is John. Oh, you might get the message they are not very happy to speak to you. Those are the nonverbals in our voice, paralanguage. It's the rate, the pitch, the volume, the intonations with which we speak, because it all sends a message. Written communication, of course, is out there as well. The letters that we send, emails, texts, all of those over the intranet, any of those ways, all of those ways are different kinds of categories, if you will, for communication. So then there are different types of communication. The course that you're taking may be just one. If this is public speaking, it is about sharing messages with other people, usually a group of 20 or larger. But there are other courses, interpersonal communication, small group communication, where we delve into those particular aspects of communication more fully. So what kinds of the different communications are there? Intrapersonal means inside. It is you talking to you. Who you are when nobody's looking. How good are you to you? Do you have wonderful, polite conversation with yourself? Do you like you? It's important. Do you give positive communication, positive thoughts, or are you always negative? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. If you say you can't do something, we manifest that kind of behavior that brings about something that mirrors what we already put out into the universe. You have to be good to yourself, kind to yourself, intra-personal communication. The words and the conversation you have with yourself. Now, interpersonal communication is the one-on-one communication you have with people, be it your spouse or your parents or your siblings, your children, whatever one-on-one interaction. So listening comes into play, perception comes into play. There's so many aspects of this, but it all builds upon each other. Small group communication is that of a task-oriented group of people, a number of people that get together to accomplish a goal. The research has changed. Years ago, it was 3 to 20 people, and now it is 7 to 20 people. No. Research was 3 to 7. Now it's 7 or 3 to 20 people. It can be as many people as you need to get the task done. Seems like a lot of people, 20 people. I would think for a small group, it would need to be enough people that could sit around my dinner table. But the research changes. All right, here we go. Public communication is next, part of what we're talking about. It's that targeted message that you have for a specific group of people that is public. Mass communication is when we share information and everyone can be privy to it. Everyone can have access to it. The message may still be targeted, but people can still have access to it. What comes to mind is Super Bowl, the commercials on Super Bowl. Most of us like watching those. And when I think of Budweiser, the Budweiser commercials, the horses and all the rest, I love those different commercials. They were so creative. I don't drink alcohol. Nothing Budweiser could do or say would make me want to drink alcohol. I am not interested. So while their message is available to me to see in terms of mass communication, the target perhaps for me to want to consume their beverage doesn't work. Mass communication. All right, social media. That's the technology end of things that's out there. And my, oh my, has it ever expanded. Actually, before social media, what we had was called CMC, computer mediated communication. Emails, texts, messages, the instant messages and the rest. But oh my word, have we surpassed that. The virtual communication we are on now, videos, YouTube, Periscope, I don't know that they're still doing that, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, the TikTok, whatever. So many ways for us to communicate now, which means there's so many ways for us to share information. There's so many ways for us to be understood and misunderstood, which is why it's important that we learn to be competent, share our messages effectively, and share them appropriately. Here is a communication model. The one on your syllabus is a little different than this, but the pieces are there. And when we communicate, when we share information back and forth with people, it is called a transactional model. It happens very quickly. I say something, you say something back, vice versa. And we think not much of it, but this is the process. Remember the definition we said, the process of? Here is that process. Let me explain it to you. And after I do, think about how you communicate. Think about the people with whom you interact and how those communications go, those interpersonal communications, the one-on-one, the intrapersonal communication you have. So we have the two people here. They are the participants, or the encoder and the decoder, the sender and the receiver, all the same. One person sending the messages, right now that would be me. You are the one receiving the message, which makes you the receiver or the decoder. Encoding means that I need to think about in my head and my heart, what do I need to say? How do I need to say it to get my message across so that it is what? Effective and appropriate. And then you decode it, you interpret it, hopefully the way that I meant for it to be, so that you can understand too. We also have, I don't see it here, we have feedback. If you think of those two arrows that you see, let's use those for feedback. Feedback is the response you get from someone when you're communicating with them, when you are interacting with them. Sometimes it's a nod of the head. Perhaps somebody else speaks or asks a question. If you're emailing, it's the response you get back. It's the second email you get or the third, whichever line it's on, that says something to the email that you prior sent. Feedback. There's also noise in our communications, and noise is anything that distracts you from the message is noise. There are times when what is noise to one person may not be noise to another. There's physical noise. If I pick up and drop something, if I cough, it's noise. Somebody opens up a door, slams it, you turn to see who it is, distracting you from the message. There is internal noise. Internal noise. And that can be psychological. That psychological noise has to do many times with our emotions. It has to do with how we feel. It has to do with our biases, our prejudices, our stereotypes, all of our preconceived notions that can be a barrier sometimes to us understanding a message. Another kind of noise, again, internal kind of noise. If you're hungry, it's noise. If you're sleepy, noise. If you don't feel well, it is noise. If the lights are too bright or too dim, that's physical noise. If it's too loud, if it's too hot, it's too cold, again, physical noise. They're barriers to communication. Semantic noise, that has to do with language and words that people use. If I'm using words that you don't understand, that could bring about a disconnect. If I said that the vicissitudes of life bring about many changes, you may say, what does vicissitudes mean? On the other hand, if I say the challenges of life, same as vicissitudes, if you will, oh, you might understand that. So many times we want to keep things more simplistic, depending on your audience, to make sure that people really, really understand. There are fields of experience you'll hear. They're also called contexts. Communication happens within contexts. If this was in a box, it would happen within that context. There is a physical context. That's where the communication takes place. Okay? Normally we'd be at South Mountain Community College or wherever you'd be meeting. But because we're virtual, wherever you are, that is the context. That is the physical context. Culture is a context. We are raised in different places with different traditions, belief systems, and it makes up who we are. And because of that, how we communicate and how we like to be communicated with will vary. So we need to consider the culture of others when we're communicating. Not everybody believes as we believe. Not everybody has the same background that we do, the same traditions that we do. So background and age is definitely a context, definitely. You don't speak to a young person the way that you do to an elderly person. Just probably don't. Doesn't mean that you have to gaga goo goo, but you'd be mindful of the vocabulary, mindful of the way that you try to share information with them. A person's background, where they come from, their experiences makes a difference. If you have experienced poverty, then how you view food when you go to a buffet might be different than a person who has never experienced it. Many times a person who's experienced poverty is mindful of waste because they haven't had much. Where the people, oh, you can just throw that away. Nope, I don't want those leftovers. You can just do whatever. Your background makes a difference. Your education, that goes hand in hand with your knowledge base and how you communicate. Your mood, your emotions have a lot to do with how you communicate. Someone can say one thing to you, oh, you really look nice today. And if you're in, a mood that's not so good, you might say, what do you mean? Don't I look good every day? What are you trying to say? Instead of just saying, oh, thank you. Okay, you may take offense to it. Financial security, all of this matters. Our socioeconomic background, gender, men and women do communicate differently. Generally, not always, but generally, men are more laconic than women. They have less to say. You ask a man, what does he want for dinner? Oh, no. You ask a woman, what does she want for dinner? Oh, my word, I am absolutely famished. I don't know, something seafood sounds good. Maybe lobster. Ooh, a good lobster tail. And maybe have some salmon with it. Ooh, a pecan-crusted salmon. Wow, why don't you just say seafood? Okay? And that is not always the case for sure, but men and women do communicate differently. Here we go. So think about, as we've gone over this communication model, as you continue to speak with others, how do you communicate? Where are the barriers? Oops, I've missed a crucial part here. The message. The message is the most important thing we need to consider. And there are several parts to the message, 2 parts. One is the issue or the content, what you actually want to say, and then there's the relationship. The nature of the relationship with the people that you are sharing information. If you care about a person, you're probably more mindful about how you speak to them. If you don't, you might say anything, just like whatever. But if you care about them, you may not do that. So you're mindful of the relationship. Is it your nana? The way you talk to your nana is probably different than the way you talk to your friends or your siblings, sometimes even your parents. The other part is channel. I don't see it here. It's the channel that's important. More than 2 parts to the channel. The channel is the way that you're using it, the way that you're sending your communication. Right now, I'm sending it verbally. Okay, there's also the nonverbal aspect of things that are going on. So verbally, orally, if you will, nonverbally, my body language, my gestures, and also the paralanguage that we talked about before. And another part to the channel is the route. Okay, verbally, email, text, Facebook, whatever I'm using to do. Think about the noise that you've seen and gotten from this video. There could be a lot of things that give you noise. One thing that is noise to me is the background. I think it's a cute background, but my little love knot keeps disappearing depending on where my head is. That's noise. You might be saying, what on earth is going on? One minute she has it and the next minute she does. That could be noise to somebody. And now that I've told you, it's probably noise to everybody. Right? The color that somebody's wearing can be noise to people. It's like, ooh, that's bright. Or wow, do they always wear black? A lot of it has to do with what we're thinking, our own experiences, our own perception about things. There's so much that comes with communication. Consider some recent interactions you've had with people. Did they go well? And if they did, what about this communication model, or where in the communication model can you point to say, this is what we did well? What are other areas and other perhaps communication interactions not go so well? Was it noise? Were you not feeling well? What was it? Try to pinpoint it. Then you'll have something that you can work on. Were you not listening? Where you're going, things going on in your head, that psychological kind of noise where you think you know what somebody's going to say. And so you're like, "Ah, whatever." Or, ooh, you can't wait until they finish so that you can break in and say what you want to say, right? Consider what makes your communication method good with people, effective and appropriate, and what areas can you improve. Here's some things to consider as it relates to communication. And this is just across the board. Clarity. Make sure your message in terms of the language that you use is simple enough for people to understand. I'm not suggesting that you have to down your vocabulary. Just make sure that whatever words you choose to use, people can understand. Make sure your communication is correct, especially things that are written. You want to keep it free from grammatical errors, free from semantic and spelling errors. Make sure it's complete. The information, the facts, whatever you need included to get the message across are contained therein. Make sure it is concise. You don't need a dissertation all the time. Just give us the information, paint the picture for us so that we understand, and move on. Coherent, that means that it flows. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there is some kind of method to your madness. Does the verb and the adjective and the adverb and the noun all go together the way that they're supposed to? And then there has to be this level of courteousness that's included. How you speak to people, how polite you are to people, how kind you might be to people. The etiquette that is important to have when you want to have good communication with others. Lots of things to consider, isn't it? All right. Whew, that's the end of that. I hope that was helpful as we begin to talk about communication where it starts. I'm going to move forward and begin. You know what? I'm going to put it in another video. I'll be back.